Hey, what's up, folks? How you guys doing? How you guys doing? Hope everyone is a-okay. Beautiful Wednesday down here in Melbourne City, the best city in Australia, if I do say so myself. So today I'll be having a very special guest joining me. She's been living under a rock, social influencer, one of the most sought after people in Australia, I believe. That's a personal opinion. I've never in my life seen anything like this. You know, when the man speaks, media gathers around him. So it's very interesting. I want to hear from the man himself because a lot of the time you hear things about people in the media and you don't know if it's true. You know, media makes up a lot of things, so it's always good to go directly to the source, which is why I wanted to have a chat with him, you know. But beyond just having a chat with Nelly, is also wanting to understand, you know, whether or not some of the positive things that the media said, have they said this because they feel bad for the bad things that they've said? Because it's like the media is very fickle in Australia. Today, they'll love you. Tomorrow, they'll hate you. You know, today they'll put you on the front page and say, you are our darling. You know, the next day, they'll put you on the front page and say something totally different. So Australian media can be very, very fickle. So it's always good to get it from the source. It's always good to get it from the horse's mouth. You know, so without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest today. As I said, if you haven't been living under a rock, you already know who he is. Conversation with him. And there's one thing that I came across in one of his previous chats where he spoke about a quote by Olivia Wilde, which goes something along the lines of one thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. And I think that's this whole idea that it's much better, like there's no such thing as bad publicity or something along those lines. I mean, that's how I'd interpret it. Nelly, how you doing?
Yeah, good man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all good. I'm all good. Thank you very much for joining me, bro. Oh, where'd he go? Oh, snap. Okay, I'll just wait for him to join again. I think we might be having some tech difficulties. But if you want to, you're more than welcome to jump on Google and have a look at who it is that I'm talking to. Because I know a lot of people probably might not know him, especially if you're based in South Africa, if you're based in other parts in Africa, and also in Australia. You know, I mean, just because you're in Australia, you may not necessarily know who he is. So jump on Google, type his name, and yeah, you'll be able to see exactly who it is that I'm talking to. You know, but I've done my homework. I always do. I've known him or about him for quite some time, and I was always impressed. I was always impressed with what I heard because I felt that Australia needs something like this. I'm always complaining. I'm always saying Australia doesn't have a celebrity. You know what I mean? It doesn't have that. You know. And then I saw some of Nelly's work, whether or not he might be proud of it. I looked up to it. I was like, I really appreciate what Nelly's doing. You know. So Nelly, how are you doing? You good? We just lost you there for a second.
I do apologize, mate. I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all good, all good, all good. Thank you very much. So I was just telling the people who are tuning in a little bit about you. There's people who are going to be tuning in from Africa, South Africa. I'm from South Africa.
Yeah.
So some people who don't know you, you know, just giving them, a brief about you. But, you know, I think the best person to talk about you would be yourself. So, you know, for the people who don't know you, can you please just tell us a little bit about who you are?
Look, I mean, there's been such a massive presumption of who I am, but look, I mean, I'm a very shy person. I don't really like to talk about myself. If you can, maybe just do a little intro.
Yeah. No, I've already given them an intro. I said, social media
Right.
darling, you know, everyone was talking about you at some point. You know, conservative Australian media made you their darling. You were on front pages, you know, based off of your opinions, you know, on the things that have been
Yeah.
happening in Melbourne, right? And
Mm.
I always find I think it's a good thing as African people when we have different opinions to what the larger
Mm.
community has. I think it shows that
Right.
you're an independent thinker. You think for yourself. You don't just go with where the crowd goes. But one thing I really want to find out from you is your childhood, your upbringing. What was that like? Like, were you born in Australia? Were you born overseas? What was your childhood like?
No, I mean, I was born in South Sudan, so I wasn't born I wasn't born in Australia. I mean,
Mm,
I think I lived here now for about close to, more than 10 years.
yeah. And so you moved from South Sudan. Did you move with family? Did you move by yourself?
Yeah, look, we moved with family, came here at a young age. I think I was about 13, 14.
Hmm.
I think from South Sudan to Egypt, from Egypt to Melbourne.
Yeah. And what was that like? What was that like back then? Like moving to Australia?
Yeah, obviously, like, with any migration to another country is always difficult, and there's a lot of challenges
Mm.
throughout the way. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. Now that's all good. So, what about some of your aspirations? I mean, coming to a place like Australia, new territory. A lot of people say, grass is greener on the other side. That's how I felt about it. But what
Mm.
about you when you were here? What were some things you wanted to be when you were younger?
Look, I mean, as coming from a third world country, a country that's got nothing, obviously South Sudan is obviously it's growing at the moment. But back then, coming here, obviously it was a different experience. You just want to have a good life and ensure that that any dreams, any aspiration is fulfilled.
Mm, mm. Definitely. Yeah, definitely. So I did read a little bit about, your stint with sports. Can you tell us a little bit about that? So which sports you were sort of involved in by professionally?
Look, yeah, look, I've always played soccer. I've played
Hmm.
at a young level. I played semi-professional, and
Mm.
and most recently, last couple of years, I played in the US. I've also played in England, but
Oh, wow.
these were playing in the lower division. It
Yeah.
wasn't really like a well-known division, but it was enough to get my name out there and get me where I am.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely, definitely. I think that still does count for something. And of course, unfortunately, while you were embarking on your career within sports, you were the victim of a terrible machete attack, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yeah, look, would have been back in 2011. Like any of us, you go to a party and you find a couple of your friends having a fight and you try and break up the fight, and unfortunately I was one of the victims. So I've gone and trying to be a good Samaritan, and unfortunately I became the victim in that instant.
Mm, yeah, that is very, very unfortunate. The other thing that's very unfortunate is that we're seeing a lot of that recently in Melbourne, right? At social events where unfortunately a lot of African youth are getting involved in violence. There's been machete attacks, people have passed away. So I think you're very, very fortunate with that. What are your thoughts on these things that are happening, with the African youth in terms of at social events? Do you think it's just us Africans, or is there like a problem in Australia?
Look, I don't believe so. I mean, every now and then, you've got each group from each ethnicity. So unfortunately, because the African community has become such an easy target for the media, any issues that occurs, um, they can't miss us. So we've just become an unfortunate target. And you look at back then, it happened with the Vietnamese when they first migrated to Australia. It happened with the Greek community, the Italian community, and unfortunately, where the African community is the last community to come to Australia, and every other community, that came before us experienced the same things.
Mm, mm. So I guess what you're saying is it's not that unique for the spotlight
No,
to be on Africans because it's happened to other racial groups as well.
absolutely. Look, and unfortunately, we've just, they've just made us a scapegoat of such incident. I mean, similar incident occurs every week, but that doesn't get reported
Mm,
because with media, anything that's got an African to it, always going to clickbait, always going to sell.
yeah. So are you saying that there is no issue at all with the African youth
Look,
and social events?
look, there's an issue, but
Mm,
it's just being blown out of proportion. Every community has issues, and unfortunately, our issue get portrayed as big issue.
mm, right. I've often seen the media say that a lot of these issues are because of tribal differences, within either the South Sudanese community or whoever is involved. Do you think there's much truth to that, or are they just making it up?
Look, previously there was. I don't believe it is at this stage. I mean, all the young guys who are having a lot of issues, were born here and have grown up here. So obviously that tribal thing doesn't really instigate with what's being portrayed.
Hmm. Hmm. Definitely, definitely. And how do you think they should be punished? You know, I mean, there are quite a few young people who are getting involved in these violent attacks. How should they actually be punished? Because it doesn't look like any sort of punishment they're given is serving as a deterrent, right? Like it's still happening. So, what do you think is the
Yeah.
best way to deal with this?
I'd probably say probably further education. I reckon the more the more investment we do in regards to investing into the younger generation, I reckon that's probably the main thing that needs to be done, needs to be looked at. And obviously, this has to come from the state government.
Okay. So when you say invest in them how?
Well, I think it's just probably going out there, meeting with these troubled youth, understand, obviously what are they going through, what can be done to ensure this doesn't happen in the near future.
Mm, mm. Okay. I understand what you're saying. Would you say Australia is racist?
Of course, I mean, absolutely, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Look, I've worked in the media, and I've seen how the media portrayed people of different skin, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, we are heading towards a country that's becoming more racist.
Right. Right.
And
Do you
it's
have?
not
Yeah.
it's not what's and a lot of people are afraid to say it, but unfortunately, sometime we need to talk about it to ensure that the issue is solved.
Right. Right. Okay. Now that wasn't always your stance, was it? I think at one point you actually said no. There's no racism in Australia, or words to that effect. So what
Yeah, look,
changed?
at the time, I don't believe I experienced it. But as you become a public figure, you become well known. You tend to get people hating on you. You tend to
Mm,
get people. You tend to to look at things from a different perspective.
mm,
And
mm,
a lot of studies have shown that obviously we are becoming a racist country.
mm. Right. One statement that you did make got you in a little bit of hot water when you called the magistrate. You said the magistrate may or may not be racist. Do you remember that statement that you made? I know
Look,
you took
I
it
mean,
back. You did take it back.
look, I mean, I still stand by what I said.
Oh, you
And
do?
yeah, of course. And look,
Wow. Okay.
and this is because I experienced what I've gone through, and
Okay.
a lot of the magistrates that I've encountered
Hmm.
and I've worked with and worked against, a lot of these magistrates, are very influenced, but are internally influenced.
Mm.
And being a person of color, um, it's always a disadvantage to us.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, of course,
And
at one of the
you can see that. You could see that. I mean, if you go to court now, um, I guarantee you, just being a person of African descent, it's a massive disadvantage.
wow. Okay. Okay. Now, when you did go to court, you pulled up in a Rolls Royce with security guards, right? Did
Yeah,
that work in your favor, or did it work
of
against you?
course. Look, yeah, look, I think it worked in my favor because the charges at the time, I think so. The the charges that I was charged for occurred back in 2002,
What?
and
Whoa. Okay.
I know, but obviously, if you become, if as someone who's known in Melbourne, um,
Mm,
as soon as you say something negative about the Victoria Police, or as soon as you say negative about someone else, um, someone is always out there to get you, and they
mm,
will ensure
mm,
that to bring out your past, and they will ensure that it's get dealt with, regardless of how the incident occurred. Now, the reason I pulled up in that fashion was to try to portray. Do you know how anyone that go to court, or anyone that gets seen going to court, is automatically assumed guilty.
mhm,
So the reason I did this is because I was trying to shift the focus from the charges that I was facing, and trying to bring sense of humor, because everyone that go to court, everyone's terrified, and unfortunately, it did work in my favor at the time. But again,
Mhm.
um, the, when the magistrate seen what I did, she sort of felt disrespected, and hence why she made that sentence.
Right, right. Yeah, the judgment. Okay. Now, there was a time in which you actually invited the magistrate to a coffee. Is that offer still open?
Look, look. Actually, I met with her afterward, not for
Oh,
coffee though,
wow.
but we had a chat, and she explained to me her judgment, and I explained to her my point of view.
Mm, mm.
But obviously, you'll never hear that. You'll never hear that report in the media because obviously the
No.
magistrate made a suppression order to ensure that this doesn't doesn't look like she's biased.
Right. Okay. 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 Now, for some time, like the Australian conservative media made you their darling, right? They basically, I think you wrote an opinion piece in one of the newspapers. And how did that come about? Like, did they contact you and ask you to start giving interviews, or how did that sort of come about?
Look, so the Edge newspaper. I mean, they're known as non-conservative. They're very sort of left-wing media. So they
Hmm.
got in touch with me and asked me to write an opinion piece, and that's what I exactly did. I did that, and um, it raised a lot of controversy. And like again, anything that I say is always going to sell.
Mm.
And they sort of use me in regards to having that article written and trying to, and that's what happened.
Yeah, I think at some point they said that you were not proud to be South Sudanese, or words to that effect.
Yeah, look, look. So I wrote the article, right? So I wrote the opinion piece, and then it gets passed on to the editor,
Hmm.
and the editor makes a final decision and makes some changes before it goes to print.
Mm,
Now,
okay.
now when I wrote my opinion piece, I submitted on to the editor, and the editor went and changed what was on there to ensure that the article generated a lot of publicity.
Wow.
Now that opinion piece where it says that I was that paragraph that says I was ashamed to be South Sudanese, I didn't write that. The editor wrote that.
Wow. You're
I know,
kidding.
so it's sort of, they sort of threw me under the bus. And
Wow.
that
Is it
article
any?
got about probably 10 million views. Now that made a lot of
Wow.
money. That made a lot of money for the organization, the Age.
Yeah.
And then when they
Was it?
saw a lot
Could
of,
you? Yeah.
yeah, go on, go on.
Yeah. Please. No. No. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, they saw. What did
No,
they
you go
say?
ahead, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. No. I was
So,
gonna say. Could you not have sued them at all, or?
I mean, I've could have gone through that path,
Hmm.
but suing an organization. I mean, it's looking back 3 or 4 years before a matter is settled,
Mm, mm, mm.
and it's such an exhausting period.
It is. It is. Right. Yeah. I think after that, yeah, they started spinning quite a lot of stories about you. It was difficult for some of us, in the African community to know what was true, what wasn't true. There was a story about Thai dollar sign that went I'd say it went viral. The story about Thai dollar sign. Now, did something actually happen between you and Thai dollar sign? Like, is there any truth to what was printed in the papers?
No, it was absolutely false. I mean, we were hanging out. I think would it be like at an Eve nightclub? I reckon.
Hmm.
So we were just chilling out, hanging out, and we just had a little argument like any other brothers would have. I mean,
Hmm.
I've got no hate towards anyone, and Thai dollar sign and YG were in Melbourne last month. We linked up.
Oh wow. Okay.
There was no concern.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's so bizarre how TMZ and all the news outlet in the US managed to get a hold of the article. But yeah, look, everything that's on there, it's completely false.
Yeah.
And the claim that they pay me how much? I mean, 900 grand, like almost a
Yeah.
million bucks. Yeah,
Yeah, that was
man.
what I wanted to ask. Like, yo, TMZ says you got quite a lot of money sent to you. So you didn't get any dough from that?
Wow, man. I mean, nothing happened. I mean, in order for me to get paid, something would have happened. Nothing happened.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, but
Okay.
that's why I mean, you've got to be like you've got to be like in the media industry because sometimes anything that fake news always going to sell.
Mm,
I mean, you could write an article tomorrow about absolutely fake stuff, false stuff. It's going to
hmm
sell. But if you add truth to it, no one's gonna click into it. No one's gonna read it.
Wow.
And
That's
that's how
crazy.
how
That's
the, that's
insane.
how the media work. I mean, not just in Australia, but globally.
Yeah.
'Cause everything's designed for the consumers to read it, by making sure that at least 80% of what's written, it's not true.
Wow, man. That's crazy. I actually didn't know that. I didn't know that at
Yeah,
all. Right.
yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'm a little bit naive, I guess. But you did go on a bit of a media run, right? You went on a bit of a media run, and I think you went to the U.S. When you were in the U.S. First of all, why did you go to the U.S.? Who invited you there?
I was playing soccer there, so I had a contract to play for a team called Phoenix Rising in Arizona.
Oh wow. Okay. Okay.
So I had a short term contract to play there.
hmm
And then off season, I went from Arizona to LA, which is, I mean, Arizona to LA is about 6 hour drive. So
Okay.
from Arizona, went to LA, and then the season finished, so I went there and hang out.
Mm. How did the invite for I think it was Good Day USA? How did that come about?
Oh look, because I mean, the Good Day USA is a business initiative for all Australians living in the US,
hmm
and because I was playing in Arizona in the US, they invited me to come down.
Yeah.
But what was reported, I mean, the guy that made that report, he was a friend of mine. Um,
No ways.
Sep, Sep Costello. His
Oh
dad,
really?
his
Yeah,
dad
Peter
is
Costello's son. Yeah.
yeah. So his dad is Peter
Right.
Costello. Peter Costello is the chairman of Channel 9,
That's right. That's right.
and
Yeah.
he's also the chairman of the Age newspaper. The article that I
Oh
wrote.
wow. Okay. Okay.
So
Right. Okay.
so Sep Costello, him and I, we went to the same school together.
No ways, for real.
Yeah, for real, man. And then
Wow. Okay.
what
That's pretty
happened
dope.
was he went and had that news piece. I'm not sure that the reporter on Channel 9.
Mm.
He went and said that I actually went all the way to the USA to sneak into an event.
Oh snap.
I mean,
Okay.
who would do that? I
Okay.
mean, surely.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean,
But
if you're calling him a friend, why would he do that? Like, why would he write like an article that's obviously false?
well, obviously he's no longer a friend. But
Right.
you know,
Okay.
if you're a journalist
Yeah.
and if you were to write a story about me
Mm.
and you know me very well and you know that anything that you will say about me
hmm
is going to sell,
Right. Okay.
you're going to write the story, right?
Yeah.
You're going to do
Yeah.
everything to ensure that you can throw me under the bus and making sure that whether it's true or false, people are going to believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. That makes sense. I mean, it still sounds like you're pretty connected though. Like, do you still have some of these connections today?
Yeah, man. I mean, you know what they say. No such thing as a good publicity. There's no
Mm.
such thing as a bad publicity,
hmm
and it actually worked in my favor because it connected me with a lot of people globally.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Okay. Okay. Now that makes sense. That makes sense.
Mm.
Now, in terms of let's go to something a little bit more positive. So, ambassadorship, right? There's been a lot of chatter about your ambassadorship, right? So newspapers were saying that you were sponsored by Nike, or you weren't sponsored by Nike, or sponsored by American. Was it American Swiss or what was the company again?
Well, American Express.
American Express. That's it. American Express. Yeah, yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know that you work for Michael Kors, if I'm not mistaken, but were you an ambassador for American Express?
Yeah, I mean, I've actually worked for American Express for 12 months
Mm,
as a third party contractor.
right. Right.
So what American Express does is American Express pays my wages, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm working as a third party contractor on their behalf.
Right, right. Okay.
Now, the media is never going to write that. The
Mm.
media is just going to write American Express Direct. Now,
Right.
but yeah, so I mean, I worked for them for 12 months. Actually, 2 years. Actually, yeah, 2 years.
Mm.
And I'm not sure if you've seen my work card. It's got my photo on it from American Express.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but look, and with Nike, yeah, I
Mm.
think there was one time I was doing a story on Fox Sport, and and I think they asked me, once you make it big in football, who would you like to be um signed with? Which brand would you like to sign with? And I said, oh look, Nike, the number
Mm.
one brand in the world. Why
Mm-hmm.
would anyone sign with them? That's what I
Of
said.
course. Yeah.
So the next day, I hear on the front page said this guy Nelly is claiming to be a Nike sponsors athlete.
Wow.
I know,
Oh
man.
man, that's
It's
crazy.
crazy. I
Okay.
know.
Yeah. Wow. Right. So I
But
mean, yeah.
sometimes someone else's opinion
Mm.
is a reflection of themselves,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and and every time they write something negative about me, they always want to get my reaction, and
Mm.
I've learned throughout the years that I'm not gonna pay attention to all this negative. It doesn't make anything. If I was a bad person that's been portrayed,
Mm-hmm.
if everything that's been said about me were true, mate, I'd be somewhere else. I'd hide away, wouldn't I?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd
True
hide.
that.
Because
Yeah.
I've got nothing. I've got nothing to be ashamed about. It's
Mm.
just, I mean, everything that's been written is just opinion. It's not fact.
Right. Right.
And again, someone else's opinion doesn't have to become your reality.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
as someone who's had so much negative publicity, you're probably immune to it now. Like it doesn't mean anything. So if someone were to write an article about you today or tomorrow, do you think it'll affect you much, or how do you respond to it?
Look, I mean, every time a good or negative article is written about me, I mean, that's just going to increase my profile.
Mm. Mm.
And I've learned to embrace negativity,
Yeah.
and it always worked in my advantage, regardless. And a lot of people that know me, and a lot of people that I'm associated with, know that everything that's written in the media is false.
Mm.
And you,
Yeah.
you look at every successful person, male or female, they've had something negative written about them,
Mm.
and
Mm.
you've just got to come out the other side as a bigger person.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Nah, well said. So what sort of advice would you give someone, who's going through that, if they've got a whole lot of negative things being talked about, with regards to them, their personalities or their reputation? What sort of advice would you give them as someone who's basically walked that path?
Look, a lot of people tend to have a soft skin, or thin skin, where as soon as one person says something bad about you, you tend to crawl away and hide from it. But I think my biggest advice is, someone else's opinion doesn't have to become your reality.
Mm.
So you always, just be true to yourself.
Yeah.
People always going to talk about you, and whether it's true or not, just try to shy away from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, true that. True that. So, in terms of your nomination, can you tell us a little bit about how that came across? So you were nominated as Australian of the Year for 2022.
Yeah, yeah.
How did
So I,
that?
I was actually,
How did? Yeah, go ahead.
so I was nominated last year for 2021 and also this year for 2022.
Oh
I'm
wow.
not sure
Okay.
if you saw my documentary.
Mm-hmm. I did.
So at the moment we are in talk with Netflix in regards to that being acquired, acquisition by Netflix.
Oh wow.
So that documentary, you know, it may not win an Oscar, But if it can inspire one person, I can go to
Mm.
bed happy.
Yeah.
Now, because of that documentary and because of what I've went through and because of all the good work that I've done, within the community that a lot of the media tend to forget, um, that documentary itself earned me the nomination.
Wow. Okay. That is pretty good. That's pretty good. Whose idea was it to come up with that documentary?
Oh, look, it's a friend of mine. I mean, a friend of mine from school.
Mm.
A friend of mine who was doing a uni student, and it was like a uni project. I think it went
Oh
for about
wow.
15
Okay.
minutes. Yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah.
it's something so small that was created for a uni project,
Yeah.
and it's on track to becoming something global.
Wow. That's fascinating. That is pretty good.
Mm.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. And now today, how does your community view you?
Oh, of course. Look, I mean, my community has always stood by my side.
Mm.
They know the person I am, and they know well enough not to, um, you know, listen or to what they read online.
Hmm.
But look, I think that my biggest support has been the community.
Mm.
And when you read the paper or you watch whatever you read online, um, it always says that the community does the opposite of what I do. But
Mm.
it's completely the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I remember once you had an interview. I think it was on Channel 7 or Channel 9. I don't remember. You were talking to a community leader and you called him a moron for,
Yeah.
I think it was for refusing to call a spade a spade.
Yeah. Look, a lot of people that know me, appreciate and respect what I do.
Mm.
And some of our community leaders sometime, um, you know, get paid to not call a spade a spade.
Mm.
And that's what's ruined the community, from grassroots to the younger, to the young guys.
Yeah.
There's no point of getting a massive handout from the government and using that to your own advantage and not using the money to help the disadvantaged kids.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's why I actually went on and actually said, look, sometimes some of our community leaders, they think to themselves. They get money, they keep to themselves. It's
Mm.
just they don't spread the money around.
Yeah. Yeah. True that. True that. Now, Australia, I always find Australia interesting in terms of African identity. If you have a look at America, right, the African
Mm,
American community has an identity, right? When you think African American, there's a particular image that comes to your mind, right? When you think
mm.
about Black people in the UK, they have an identity as well, right? So all over the diaspora where African people are, they have some sort of identity. But Australia doesn't really have that, right? Like, so as African Australians, we don't really have our slang, we don't have an identity. Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, Australia is probably still living in the 1950s. I mean, it's going to take another 10 to 20 years
Mm,
before African are accepted into the Australian community and appreciated as citizens. I mean, we've
mm,
still got a long way to go, and unfortunately, I mean, there's a lot of racism everywhere.
yeah.
It's just a lot of people don't talk about it, and the people that don't talk about it, and the people that think that doesn't happen, are the people who are afraid to speak out. And I think we've got probably another 10 years, I reckon,
Yeah.
before we are, as African, are fully accepted into the Australian community.
Mm, mm.
And it's very sad that I have to say this, but it's the actual fact.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, just
is
for
there is
example, I
there
mean, look
okay,
look at
good,
our
good.
TV. I mean, when
Hmm.
was the last time you saw a person of color on TV?
Yeah, almost never, yeah.
Look at the radios. Look at the local radio. Look at all the mainstream.
Mm,
Look at all the everywhere. You look at all the news desks.
mm,
I mean, you look at the ABC might hire one or two African people, but they always put them behind the desk. They
mm,
don't want them succeeding. They don't want them in front of the camera.
mm, mm. But what
It's
about
just because
someone that
they're not
says,
they're not comfortable.
Yeah, but people could say to you, that's just the law of averages, right? So there's not that many Africans, so of course you're not going to see a lot of Africans on TV. What do you say to that?
Well, I think it gets down to politics. A lot of
Mm,
politics plays a massive part. In this industry, it's all about who you know. It's
mm,
not about your qualification. It's not about what you've done. If you know someone in the industry, you'll go far. And politics is what's
right,
doing
right.
everything. Yeah. And unfortunately, us
Mm.
African, we don't have the firm connection in order for us to succeed in any field.
Right. So are you saying that that is the major obstacle for us right now? Do we really need to have those connections? So it's not possible to do it by ourselves?
Look, at the moment, I reckon the African community has become so voiceless. We don't have a voice, um, and this is due to not having the right contacts in getting far in life. In the industry where you, especially in the media industry.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Someone's asked you a question here. They want to know about your paid partnerships on your Instagram. So the paid posts. Can you tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
that? Like, so how you came across those, and if you're allowed to get
yeah, look,
into the specifics of it.
yeah, of course, yeah, man. A lot of brands reach out to me, asking me to promote their stuff,
Hmm.
and I do that. They pay me every now and then, X amount of money,
Hmm.
and I promote them.
Is it quite lucrative?
Oh yeah, look, it can be a time, but and and look, a lot of these brands do their research before they partner with anyone.
Mm,
Now, you can only imagine all the negative stuff they read about me, and yet they choose to partner with me. You know,
mm,
so it speaks volume.
yeah, yeah.
And
I guess.
I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but I think I've got a massive reach, um, because of what I've gone through. Because sometimes um, negative publicity, it depends on how you use it to your advantage, and I've learned to embrace it and
Mm,
use that as a genius marketing tool.
yeah, right. Are you allowed to give us sort of like a ballpark figure of how much like each post maybe?
Oh, ah, I'd probably say, a couple of thousand.
Right, per post?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, post, story,
Yeah.
maybe a couple of thousand. You're looking at 10,000 plus.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Okay. And are these like global companies or just based in Australia?
Oh, they're a global company. They're everywhere. I mean, these are companies that are trying to get global. These are big companies that are struggling to have a global reach. And
Mm,
these are companies that are well known, but yet trying to become number one. Because every brand is looking for exposure, no matter how,
yeah.
how big they are, no matter how big they are. And they'll use as many people of influence to push their brand, to promote their brand.
Mm,
And look, marketing is probably the biggest tool that people can utilize in the world. If
yeah.
you are someone of influence, if you can sell something, you can sell a product, by any mean necessary. Any company would want to partner with yourself.
Mm, mm. Right. So today, what are you sort of busy with like nowadays? And is there anything that people can look forward to you doing like in the near future? Any sort of projects
Oh
that you're
man,
working on?
yeah, I've got a lot. I've got a lot, and
Mm,
unfortunately, I can't say much, but me, I like to surprise a lot of people, and I have done that in the
yeah.
past.
Right.
But
Right.
you'll be extremely surprised and shocked what my next initiative will be. It's going to be
Hmm.
massive. You're looking at President
Right.
Trump. Yeah,
Wow. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay.
yeah.
Now excited.
But I
Excited to
mean,
see.
and the thing is, I'm always, I always want to make sure that everyone that I come across, is, is brought in the same pathway. You know, because I mean, you know, I'm a people person. I love people,
Mm,
and you know, I want to see a lot of people being successful. I want to see a lot of people become successful. And if I could
mm,
use that, if I could assist with my contact, I'm always open to that.
mm. Okay, okay.
Because
Now
remember,
moving.
anyone anyone in this world is reachable.
So can you say that again?
I said, anyone, any individual in this world is contactable. You can reach out to them.
Oh, true that. True that. True that. True that. So, how are you? Okay, okay. So what do you think is the solution for African empowerment, like in Australia, right? So I heard you said, we don't really have connections. I personally think that we don't necessarily need connections, but that's just my personal opinion. I respect your opinion, but
Yeah.
what do you think are some things that we can do by ourselves as Africans to sort of be out there? Because I think that we probably need a lot of representation in sort of like the cross section of the community, but as someone who has been in the media, you've been out there, you've been on a lot of, popular Australian publications, what would you say? What would you say something that we can do better? Or how can we empower ourselves as African Australians?
I reckon we're very divided, and I think we need to work together as one. You know, I noticed that there seems to be a lot of jealousies between our own community, and that's what's hurting us the most. You
Mm,
know, and I think as soon as we collaborate as one, we work as one community, I think we could do so much to raise the profile of our community. Because if you look at all the other successful community, they all work as one. We're the only community that is divided.
mm,
And, and it's a shame that, you know, that we're like this. And, and I just reckon we need to work as one. We need to help one another. We need to ensure that when someone becomes successful or when someone is on the path to becoming successful, we support that person.
mm.
Because, as soon as this person becomes successful, you know, they could pass our success to another person. And it's just a domino effect.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with, I mean, even going back to Africa, our own history,
Mm,
the reason most of our countries have a lot of issues because there's a lot of division amongst ourselves.
mm.
And until we work together and until we start to support one another, I mean, we've got a long way to go. And that's
Mm.
just with any industry.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
mean, we are making progress slowly, but it's just it's a slow progress.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying. I've seen a few African Australians be in like pretty high profile like movies, like on
Yeah,
Netflix, in Hollywood, and of course we got the three guys who are part of the Australian squad, the Socceroos,
yeah,
the three guys from South Sudan, which is pretty
yeah.
good. But a lot of people do though say that in Australia it appears that when Australians think about African Australians, they seem to only focus on South Sudanese. Do you think there's any truth to that?
Of course, because the Australian media is not as bright as they look. Honestly, literally,
Yeah,
honestly, I mean, I mean, the same thing with politicians. I mean, you look at our
yeah,
politician. I mean,
mm,
I mean, I've worked in politics and I've worked in the media. A lot of our politicians, including the premier, well, I don't think it's going to be the premier after Saturday, but
really.
I doubt it. I mean,
Okay.
a lot of our politicians, you can never sit with them and have a normal conversation because a lot of them rely on advisors and notes and tell them what to say and what to say. And
Mm,
the same with our journalists. I mean, they call themselves journalists, but a lot of them, they're not as bright as they look.
mm, mm. Right, right. Now I hear what you're saying. Do you think in our lifetime we'll ever see a black or African prime minister?
Of course, I'm planning to be one.
Yeah. All right. Okay. That
Yeah,
sounds
man.
good. That
Look,
sounds good. All right.
look, me. I'm very passionate about politics,
Uh-huh.
and the last 2 years, there's been we've we've had a we've got a government that's incompetent, and we've got an opposition leader who's very weak.
Mm.
And I think, you know, I was planning to run as a candidate this this state election. I was going to run as a candidate, but I
Mm.
thought, it's probably too early for me, and Australia is probably not ready, or Victoria isn't ready to accept a black politician. I mean, you look at our politics, both state and federal. There's no person of color.
No, there isn't. But I guess it depends on how you define person of color, right?
Well, I mean, I'm talking about someone African. There's no
Yeah.
African. Yeah,
Oh,
there's other
actually,
colors.
oh,
There,
actually,
there
there's the one
used to be.
lady,
Yeah,
the lady in Adelaide.
she no longer is.
Oh, she isn't.
Yeah, she's from Kenya. Yeah, she was
Yeah.
in the Liberal Party.
Right, right.
But
Yeah, yeah.
but I really think, for our, I think we should get, and my advice to most of our African brothers and sisters, I think we should get into politics.
Mm.
But as soon as, the rest of the community see a politician like us on TV, this would lead on to more people get into politics. I mean, you look at the federal level, there's no African. Look at the state level, there's no African.
Mm.
Well, actually, there's one at state level in Perth. She's a local politician in Perth. I think she's probably the only South Sudanese in Perth, but that's just the
Wow.
state level. Yeah.
Yeah.
But look, I do. I mean, I am very passionate, and
Mm.
I do want to get into politics,
Mm-hmm.
and I reckon I've got a chance. Because politics is about being visible. If you're not visible in the community, you can't get in. You just got to have
Mm.
influence and be visible. And
Yeah.
as soon as I get into Parliament, I'll probably restore a lot of common sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Now that makes sense. If you did run, which party would you run under, or would you be independent?
I'd probably run as independent, because if I run with the major party, I'm always going to be gagged. I can't say anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where if I run as independent, I can say whatever I want. I mean,
Mm.
you look at Pauline Hanson.
Mm.
She spent she
Right.
spent she spent 3 months in jail,
Mm-hmm.
and with a significant criminal record, and yes, she's in Parliament just talking shit.
Mm. Mm.
So
I hear you. I hear you.
you know, I reckon there's a tremendous there's a tremendous demand to have
Mm.
someone of African descent to get into politics.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, definitely, definitely. I hear what you're saying, but the thing with Pauline Hanson is that she has a very strong base because of the things that she says, right? So,
Yeah,
are you looking to do the same? Are you looking to get people, revved up with the same sort of, remarks that she makes, statements?
not really. I mean, I'm just going there. I'll go there because I want to work for people. I want to give people what they want, because a lot of our politicians that get into politics,
Mm,
as soon as they get voted in,
mm,
they forget about the constituent, the people that vote them
mm,
in. They
mm,
forget about us, and they assume so much power. And the only time they want us back, they want to get in touch with the constituent, is during election, when they're begging for our votes.
mm,
Now, all the politicians that are in Parliament at the moment, a lot of them, again, they're not as bright as they look. A lot of them rely on a lot of advisors to tell them what to do.
mm,
I,
mm.
yeah,
Right, but what you've just said, a lot of people would say that you kind of sound like a politician because that's what politicians say, right? So politicians always say they'll work for the constituents, right? So what makes you believe that people will actually vote for you based off of what you're saying? Like, sort of, what would you be bringing to the table that they haven't seen before?
I'll bring common sense. that's what's lacking in Parliament.
In
A
what
lot
way?
of our look, a lot of the politicians are so good at making empty promises, and they never deliver.
Mm,
Now
mm,
you've got someone like me who's well known in the community who isn't afraid to call a spade,
mm,
and I'm going there representing the people that votes me in. And look, man,
mm.
and that's why I reckon I've got the capacity to run as a politician. Maybe next election could be in the federal, the state,
Mm.
but I'm very confident I can get in.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you seem to be very, very driven, and I wish you all the best with that.
Yeah,
I think that a lot of people within our community will probably vote for you because we
of course,
do
of
want to
course.
see, a familiar face in parliament.
Yeah, yeah, and it's the lack of diversity in Parliament. It's what drives me because in the next 10 years, I want an African person to be elected as the premier, or the next 10 years, the African person being elected as a prime minister. And I reckon sometime we need someone like myself to get in to open the floodgates for the rest of the community.
Of course. Of course. Yeah. No, definitely, definitely. And I think that for a lot of African youth or just African people out there, they shouldn't be scared as well to go for, I'd say positions at local council level, mayors, working just in local council offices. Start at that level before working their way up. I think that's not a bad idea as well. We really definitely need great representation in Australia, in different parts of the community. Then that'll be good. At the moment, the issue is that as Africans, we're just considered as entertainers. That's pretty much it. We're seen
Mm,
as a one-trick pony, right? Whether
yeah,
artists or athletes. That's pretty much it.
actually, that's it. I mean, we're you know we're the way we've been portrayed. It's like we're it makes me upset because I see these all the time. In the newsroom, um, everywhere, and it's just the way African people are perceived. It's just disgraceful. And I reckon until we get someone in that position to open the floodgates for the rest to come on board, I think, I reckon probably another 5, 10 years. That's when the community is going to work as one, and everyone's going to start appreciating us.
Indeed, indeed. All right. Do you have just one last question for you? So, if you were voted for prime minister, what's the first thing that you're going to do for the community?
Look, I'm very passionate about immigration. I'd probably close down immigration. Now,
Close
before,
down immigration.
yes, well, I
All
mean,
right.
sorry, not immigration, detention centers, immigration.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, before the federal election, I met with Anthony Albanese when he was in opposition, and I asked him. I said, "Look, if you were to become a prime minister, what are the chances of people in detention being released? Because at the moment, Australia is the only country in the world that can hold someone in detention indefinitely without release. Now, there's about 1,400 people in detention, immigration detention. Some of them have been there for 10 years. And these guys they're not criminals, they're just asylum seekers. They've been on there for 10 years, waiting to have their paperwork processed to come into the community. And now I met with both government. I met with Peter Dutton, I met with Scott Morrison, Anthony Albanese. All these cunts, literally, they said they'll never look. This is exactly how I spoke with them when I met them. Because
Yeah.
when I meet a lot of these people, right? I meet a lot of these high-profile people, right?
Yeah.
I talk to them like a mate.
Yeah.
I don't care about their position. I don't care about
Mm-hmm.
who they are, what they do.
Mm.
And that's the reason that a lot of them talk to me. That's why a lot of them respect me, because I talk to them as a mate. I
Mm.
don't treat them special.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I said to them, and a lot of them were very opposed having those immigration detention centers shut down.
Mm,
For them, it's a cash cow. They make money out of that.
mm.
But like if I was to get elected, I reckon probably the first 100 days, you know, I will make sure that each person or each constituent or each voter, I'll be working based on what they need and what's required for the community, not based on what the bureaucrat want me to do.
Indeed, indeed. I think in terms of detention centers, though, I hear what you're saying, but
Mm.
and I do sympathize with people who are in detention centers, but it's very difficult to screen them. I mean, how do you know who you bring into our community?
Well, the first thing I would do is get rid of indefinite detention, indefinite, period.
Hmm.
There's only 1,500 people in detention. Literally 1,500, 1,500. It doesn't take 10 years to have someone processed. Now, if the government decide that they want to deport this person, you can deport a person, but they've got a 3 years exclusion period where they can't come into the country for 3 years after they get deported. Now, those 1,500 people in detention, it will probably take about 6 months to screen and process each one of them. Now, it's taken the previous government 12 years to do that, and yet they haven't done anything. And the current incumbent immigration minister, Andrew Giles, he hasn't done anything. He's been in government for the last 6 months, and all he's doing is blaming the previous government. So rather than getting to work and walking the walk.
I hear you. I hear you. So someone wants to know. Oh, what's that? Someone wants to know what brand car are you in? Apparently, this is related to your brand sponsorships. They want to know what car are you in?
Oh, this
It says
car.
based on
No,
your sponsorship cash. Yeah, what brand car are you in? That's what the
no,
question says.
no. This isn't a sponsorship car. This is like a family car. I think I'm in what car is this? A Hyundai Santa
Right.
Fe.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool. Now that's all good. Look, I've had a pleasure having a chat to you. Do you have any last words before we close up today?
Not really. I mean, my advice would be like, um, again, someone else's opinion doesn't have to become a reality. Now, just every time someone talks about you, a lot of people, the only reason a lot of people bring out your past is because they are intimidated by your present, and just people need to realize that.
Well said. Well said. Nelly, thank you very much for joining me today. I look forward to hearing great things about you. Thanks again, my man.
Oh man, you'd be surprised, man. All right.
All right. See you later.